What's up, Toronto commuters? I wanted to explain, like, why we can't have bike lanes in certain spots because it's not always obvious, right? Like, this segment of Black Creek Drive, you'd think there's tons of space, you know, you totally, need to use it to, to get north or south through this area. It would seem like it's a perfect candidate for some pretty generous bike lanes. I mean, it's even in the 10-year cycling network plan, but I think it's not going to get done. I think they've decided not to do it. And I mean, to me, it's really clear. So I wanted to make it clear for everyone else. We can't have bike lanes along here because drivers are too dangerous. The driving speed is 70 kilometers an hour, and you know we can't. It's not like we could put some Jersey barriers like the ones here over on on this side to protect cyclists and pedestrians from drivers, because that's not what they're for. They're for protecting drivers from other drivers. And you can see further down over here there's this guardrail, which would it's kind of limits the amount of space. So we can't really have like cycling infrastructure here because there's this hill there and there's no way to change terrain. It's not like you can build a flat spot where there's a hill. So um, and we can't move this guardrail. It would cost several $1 million. It would have to come out of like our fluoridation budget or our police services budget, and we really need those police for guarding construction sites. Construction workers need protection from drivers, and that's the priority. On this side, I mean, it's the same thing. You'd have to install a guardrail there, and it would cost money. It would have to come out of the transportation services budget, and also, it would destroy grass, and we've got to maximize the green space. We've got a real premium on the green space that we have, so we can't just go about scrapping it up all over the place. So that's why there's no bike lane there, or a sidewalk. I mean, there's a sidewalk obviously, but you're not allowed to walk on it. And yeah, it's because driver speed is really fast, and so because drivers are dangerous and cars are dangerous, we can't have anybody cycling along there. So that's why it looks like there's room, but that space has been set aside for grass, for green space, which we need. And then I also wanted to explain for Lawrence as well, because up here on Lawrence, you can see there's this rail line going along here, and it's difficult to cross that on a bike. You can see there's the highway with about 20 lanes to drive through, and it's really important to to not allow any cyclists to use this, because that would be like a half lane where people wouldn't be able to drive, and if there was a bike lane here, you wouldn't be able to like pull over in an emergency into this half lane type of spot. So it's really important to keep cyclists off there. And of course, there's no way to make a crossing across these tracks. It's just impossible. It's not like you can like make like a platform, with a couple of ramps or something like that. That's crazy. I mean, that's just that's that's ridiculous. Along this spot here, we need to keep this like it is, because this extra space here is really important. It's a magical space which nobody is allowed to be in, and it's basically it's like a physical offering to the traffic gods. I know it doesn't, you look at it, you think, okay, it doesn't make any sense, but it's also reserving space for this very important left turn lane, because if there was only like 5 lanes instead of 6 here, then drivers wouldn't have a special left turn lane and also this right turn lane here. So because there's no way to have an intersection like this with any less than 6 lanes, and because you have to like prepare for this special left turn lane and sort of hold space in reserve, and also because the traffic gods, they do demand sacrifices in terms of space and and obviously lives, but they demand spatial sacrifice too. So this is why we've got to have these really narrow walkways here that are they got to be, this is the city's specification for walkways, they've got to be too narrow for a cyclist and a pedestrian to share them. And then the specification for these curb lanes is they've got to be wide enough for a cyclist and a driver to share them. And you can't, like, because drivers just respond to wide curb lanes by driving super fast in the middle of them. So there's no real way to bike on this, but that's why you can't really bike through here. But not for no reason. It's for very good reason. This unused space right here is really important. So that's why we can't have any bike lanes there, and we can't widen these walkways on either side here, obviously, because that would encourage people to use them on a bike, and we can't have pedestrians and cyclists sharing the same space, because that's tremendously dangerous to pedestrians. A pedestrian's actually been killed recently in England in a collision with a cyclist. The cyclist ran right into her. She wasn't on the sidewalk or anything like that. She had stepped out into the road and stopped in front of the cyclist. But it shows that cyclists and pedestrians, they don't mix. They can't share the same space. I mean, they do all the time on our recreational trails and stuff like that. But that's a special that's a special circumstance, because it's not for commuting. It's just for recreation and stuff like that. So that's different. Roads like this, why couldn't we have a bike lane here? I mean, having a bike lane here, again, it would take space away from this left turn lane, and then, how would drivers turn left? Like, they'd have to turn left in some other way. They'd have to hold up, drivers who are behind them. They'd have to drive around them and stuff like that, and it's just too crazy. It's too much of an expectation. So. That's too inconvenient for drivers, so this is why you got to walk your bike across here on this sidewalk, where there's not really enough space to do it. When you gotta pedestrians have to make certain sacrifices, so that drivers can get around. So this is one of those spots, and it's not that big of a deal. You can't really get across it on a bike or on foot, but look at the benefits. I mean, here you have 4 super wide lanes instead of 4 super narrow lanes. So if you're driving, you can go super, super fast. And it also gives us this extra bus bay so that the bus doesn't slow down drivers. So again, like, for the benefit of making sure that drivers can go through here really fast, there's just no point in providing space for people to bike. So that's why there's no bike lane there. I also wanted to talk about, I mean, this pretty much applies to, almost all of the kind of suburban arterials and stuff like that. This is another really good example. Transportation Services recently put a sidewalk down the left side of Jane here, and they considered doing a shared path here, but running a shared path down here, with cyclists and pedestrians, it would have involved, a wider path. They would have had to make it go around some of these obstacles here, and it presents a really onerous and expensive design challenge to try to figure out how to pack in some cycling space and walking space along here. It's just, this is one of those spots where there's just no way to put in any cycling space because of the intense design challenge involved. There's just not enough room, as you can see. There's it's like 3 meters of clearance, maybe 4, but you'd have to go around some of these objects and stuff. So that's why there's just not enough room. Up here it would have to, it would have to cross over some of this stuff. You'd have to do curb cuts. It would go across some people's driveways. Obviously, these people need this space. These residents need this space here in front of their homes to drive in and out. And if there was a bike path going across that, then they might have to, yield to cyclists when they're turning in and out of their driveways. It's too much to expect. You could, of course, you could run a bike lane along the road, but then again, we would lose this really important left turn lane. And as you can see here, it's absolutely critical for drivers. They need this left turn lane. You can see how popular it is. And this is kind of the way it is with the whole stretch of Queen. It alternates back and forth between segments with 4 super wide lanes or 5 kind of narrow ones, and the left turn lanes, they really do get a heck of a lot of use. You can see right, and even on Google Street View, you can see how important these spaces are. This space here, it's not a turning lane, but it's in reserve for this turning lane up here, right? Because it makes it so much easier to turn onto Weston here. This is Jane and Weston, and I mean, look at that. You got 3 drivers using this left turn lane here. Those 3 drivers, they absolutely need this. So, in order to make it easier for drivers to turn left, we got to have these left turn lanes, and that's why there's just no room for any cycling space here. There's a spot along Lawrence that I recently noticed. Yeah, near Lawrence and Dufferin. And there's a lot of spots like this throughout the GTA where there's a whole bunch of extra space here next to the arterial road. There's no place to bike, and you get a lot of cyclists on the sidewalks and stuff, and you think, well, like, what is preventing the city from installing a bike lane along the side here where all this concrete is anyway? Well, as with that segment of Jane, these are driveways, and if there was cycling infrastructure there, then drivers would actually have to slow down, and yield to cyclists before turning into their driveways. That would cause the curb lane here to back up, and Lawrence is busy enough as it is because people have to drive. It's not like you can just get around using a bicycle or something like that, and the buses are really slow, and there's way too many people trying to use the public transit network. So you need to be able to drive around, and so because driving is really important, because there's no place to bike, we can't get away with installing a bunch of cycling infrastructure, because then we wouldn't have as much driving space. In this spot, you'd think, well, is this space really, super necessary? Is this grass here super necessary? Is this stuff over here super necessary? Is it more important than bike lanes? Like, there's obviously room and stuff, but as you can see here in this Google satellite view, this left turn lane here is extremely important. And so, because it's so critical to have this left turn lane here, at in this case it's at Lawrence and Marley, to facilitate drivers turning left into the mall here at Lawrence Center. You can see, in Google Street View, you can see how important this left turn lane is. It's absolutely critical for drivers turning left. Without it, there'd really be no way to get into this shopping center. And you can see, I mean, those two people here in this Google Street View, those two people, they would otherwise be part of this lineup here. And look how long that lineup is. That lineup stretches back, 10 car lengths, and then you can see there's nobody here, obviously, but drivers need space to pile up at the intersections, because otherwise we need these big empty roads between the big waves of traffic so that you can run across or bike across and get across those roads. It's hard enough to get across at the intersections, so this is why you got to max out. You got to have intersections like this really do need a full 7 lanes to accommodate all the drivers, because like I said, you have to drive. It's not like you can bike around because there's no space to bike. So if you can't bike around, and if if the transit system is going to be so overloaded, right, what option does that lead to? You got to drive. So we got to provide the maximum driving space. I mean, for most of the day, most of the road is empty, but it's during the early morning commute that that we need every single one of these spots. So because of that, that 1 hour period in the morning where all these extra turning lanes and stuff they're full about half the time. Because of that 1 hour period, we totally, we can't afford to have any cycling space, because it would take away from look how busy Weston gets. Even drivers are even filling up the space that you're not allowed to be at here. I mean, okay, this is basically due to the construction on Eglinton, and this is a special case here, but obviously, if there weren't these 6 lanes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the reserved one, without these full 6 lanes, drivers would be totally hooped, and we can't afford that, because driving isn't it's not optional. You have to do it. There's no other real alternatives. So I mean, can't have any bike lanes on Weston, because we need we need these 3 lanes to allow these drivers to they got to shuffle around so that the fast drivers can get in front, the slow drivers can stay behind and stuff, and so they need lots and lots of lanes to shuffle around. And I mean, passing each other and competing for space is really an important part of commuting. It's how people express themselves on the road. So they need those extra lanes. Like you can see right here, there's no space for cycling lanes, because this auxiliary lane here serves the very, very important purpose of reserving this left turn lane. As you can see, this left turn lane, it's totally critical. It's totally critical to this spot, because it allows drivers to get into onto this side street here. And every space where there's a side street coming off of one of these main roads, we absolutely need these left turn lanes, and you can see how important they are in these Google Street View images. They're totally critical to the road. So, this is a spot, again, there's plenty of room for a bike lane, but only if you removed this extra fifth lane in the middle. And as you can see, it's totally critical. It's not an option to remove that. So I hope this, this kind of chills out a lot of those the crazy cycling activists and stuff out there, who are picking apart every little bit of every little road and trying to put bike lanes in where they don't belong, where they'd allow people to, to commute further than a few kilometers at a time. The biggest reason for, that we can't really afford bike lanes is because it would give it'd give cyclists access to what we have set aside for drivers, which is being able to commute between neighborhoods and stuff like that. If cyclists could do that, then the value of the car to GTA residents would decrease, and the province can't afford that. We totally rely on our auto manufacturing industry, and the GTA can't afford it either. We rely on our auto dealerships and stuff like that. So, I just wanted to make those points. Just wanted to explain a little bit. There's reasons for everything. Every place where you look, where it seems like it would be a good idea to have a bike lane or to have to have wider sidewalks or something like that, there's a reason that it's not like that, and the reason is it would take away from drivers, or it would take away from our budgets, our police budgets and stuff like that. Here, Scarlet Road, another great example. It seems like there's space. It seems like there's tons of extra space, but you can see there's no room because there's this guardrail here, and we can't be shuffling the guardrail to be between the road and the pedestrian area, or pedestrian cycling area, because that's not what guardrails are for. They're for preventing cars from going into ditches. They're not for protecting people from drivers. So we got to go with the intended, the design intention behind stuff. And if we wanted to widen this sidewalk, we'd have to narrow down these curb lanes to a normal width, and that would reduce the driving speed here. You can see, we want drivers to be able to go around here at 60, 70 kph without having to slow down. So and we need these islands and stuff. Islands are very important. This left turn lane here, very important. As you can see, it gets a lot of use. This left turn lane here, very important. So that drivers can get onto these side streets. As you can see, there's somebody even using it in this picture here. And also, like I said before, the grass. We need every little piece of grassy space that we can get. So, we've got space on reserve for left turn lanes. That's totally critical. The grass, totally critical. And having super wide curb lanes to allow drivers to do, up to 70 kph. That's really useful for people to be able to go super, super, super fast through these residential areas. It really does help out Torontonians, and getting to work on time and stuff like that. There's these, a lot of these cycling activists, like, they really don't want people to be able to get to work on time. Wide lanes like this, the left turn lanes, so that drivers don't have to, the super wide turning radius type of designs here, so that drivers don't have to slow down when they're going around corners, and obviously, like, it means pedestrians have to watch out for traffic, and yield to drivers, before they're crossing. Pedestrians don't really, like, just because you got the green light and you've got the walking man and stuff like that. It doesn't mean you have the right of way. You have the right of way if there's no drivers, about to make a turn. These super, super nice turning radius spots, every time a driver comes through here, they save like half a second or, even a whole second. And if you look at some of the commutes that people are making, if you're repeating that, there and there and there and there and there, by the time you're across the city, you've saved 5 minutes, by having roads that don't feature any, having roads that don't cater to cyclists and pedestrians. It really does save time for drivers. So that's my little presentation. That's my little explanation for next time you see a spot where it seems like, you could totally have a bike lane. Look for look for a left turn lane. Look for grassy space on the side. Look for driveways and stuff like that. Look for null space like this that is on reserve for a left turn lane. You'll see how important those left turn lanes are. As you can see in any street view picture you look at, you can see how critical the left turn lanes are. So yeah, I hope that kind of puts an end to all the speculation on why don't we have a bike lane here? Why don't we have a bike lane there? There's all this space over here. There's all this space around there. There really isn't space. All the space is being used to its complete full potential already. So we gotta work with what we have.